Ian, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about your background and your connection to diabetes and um, what brings you here today?
Yeah, thank you, Mary, and thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to chat about this. I'm Ian. I am 31, live in Glasgow, and I have an older sister with type 1, Kirsty. She was diagnosed at 18 months old, and I then came along 6 months later. So I was born into a family with diabetes in the family. And I now currently work for Diabetes UK as their Type 1 Services Programme Manager. So I work with our youth programme, our Together Type 1 programme, that works with young people aged 11 to 25 with Type 1. So I'm working in Type 1 and have a personal connection to it.
Excellent. Like, so, what was it like growing up then with type 1? Like, you didn't know any different, but how did it feel different in your family? Like, um, were there elements that were specific to you or other family
Yeah,
members?
yeah. I always find this question very interesting because I was born into a family with diabetes in the family, and I've never known any different. So I didn't really realize or recognize that my family was any different until I really went to school and started going over to like friends' houses and started to kind of go and have dinner at a friend's house. And I remember really distinctly. So back then, this is going back 31 years. Well, yeah, probably about between 30 and 25 years ago, would probably be this time. But I went over to a friend's house for dinner, and back then, Kirsty, my sister, was on set injections per day and had to be at set times. So then, m- very regimented. So then, meal times had to be at set times as well, and had to eat a certain amount and had to have the dinner exactly on the table at 5 p.m. so that we could eat. Went over to a friend's house when I was about 5 years old, and their mum said to me, "Oh, so dinner's not quite ready yet, so we'll probably eat, about quarter to 6, 6 o'clock." And I went into full panic. I didn't understand how dinner didn't have to be on the table at 5 p.m.
Yeah,
And that was when I started to notice and realize that there was something different about my family as opposed to my friends,
did you
and
actually
other
panic?
families. I had a panic, yeah. I had a real kind of panic and a bit of a fear of
Yeah,
what is happening here and why is this not so regimented.
yeah.
Um, and I remember, so my friend's mum was a nurse, so she fully understood diabetes and fully understood like kind of that regime that people might be on. And I think she had a little word with my mum and dad after that to say Ian had a bit of a panic, bit of a wobble, and didn't quite know what was going on. And then that was when I started to get included a little bit in like knowing what diabetes was and being aware of what it was and um, being
Do you
kind of
think that
explained.
affected you, like in your life, like like that type of lifestyle without the context? Is do you think having that experience helped reshape that it could be different? It could have been different, or like the. I'm just thinking about your anxiety levels. Like,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of my own family now. Like, does
yeah.
it
No, I mean,
add to?
definitely. I know that. So I've had I've struggled quite a bit over the years with anxiety and kind of poor mental health. And I think that there are elements of it that probably is attached to
Yeah.
that kind of. I kind of describe my family in the most loving way of being chaotic loving. So it was
Mm,
absolute chaos as a child. I felt that chaos. I knew that chaos was happening, but it was
I can
such a
so relate.
environment. And so I know that the adult I am now, the 31-year-old that's working in diabetes, that's supporting people living with diabetes and their families, I can relate a lot to that 8-year-old that comes up at an event and says, "Oh, my sister has diabetes, and if this doesn't happen, then all hell breaks loose." And I can relate to that because I was that little child. I was that little boy. Um, and I think it has shaped me into the adult that I am, and it shaped me into kind of how I handle maybe stressful situations and how I respond to them, both in really positive ways and probably quite negative ways. I'm
Yeah.
great in an emergency. I'm great
Yeah.
in an emergency situation, but I also have that underlying anxiety of stuff might go wrong here, something might go
Preventative stuff,
bad.
like you're like backups for backups everywhere.
Yes, totally, totally.
And like, did I'm just thinking, like, our next question was like, did you feel involved in Kirsty's care, or more on the sidelines? I'm just wondering, did involving you in her care help you, or hinder you, or like,
Well,
did it?
it totally helped me. It really did help me. So, kind of following that experience of panic of realizing that there was something
Yeah.
different, my mum and dad and sort of wider support system did start to speak to me a lot about diabetes and involve me a lot. And I remember, so we went along to a family support group when we were younger and got a lot of support from that. And then my mum and dad went on to lead that group and to provide support for other people. And I remember that was a real game changer at, at being in those spaces and hearing what else was happening and hearing how other families and siblings dealt with things. But also, I remember my mum and dad started to talk to me at quite a young age about what to do if there was an emergency. So if Kirsty was to hit the floor and have a hypo and pass out, I
Yeah.
knew what to do. I knew we had the old glucagon injections in the orange boxes in the fridge, drawing up that
Do you know how to
syringe,
do
and
that?
then I knew how to do that because we practiced. We took ones that were out of
How
date
to do it?
and drew
Yeah.
them up and practiced on oranges,
Yeah.
just to make sure that I knew what to do. And I think I've never had to use it in an actual emergency situation, but we've came close to it, and I've always known that I could, and I've always known how to, and that made me feel so much calmer at knowing, okay, if something did happen, if something were to go wrong, I would know how to support in that moment, and then how to make that phone call as well to 999 if needed. And I knew that from quite a young age, but for me, that really helped me. For my older brother, so we also have an older brother who's 2 years
Yeah.
older than Kirsty and 4 years older than I am. He was diagnosed with autism when we were younger as well. So he's got a very different relationship to diabetes than I have. I was a lot
How is
more
that?
involved.
How is that then? Like, how do you how have you perceived his relationship to diabetes in the family compared to yours?
Yeah, so I was a lot more involved in that kind of care and involved in the support. And I'd like me and Kirsty are best of friends and always have been since a very young age.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to be there and always wanted to be around to support and to help where I can and to I knew that there was a role for me to do that. My brother had an awareness of diabetes, knew what to do
Yeah.
if there was an emergency, didn't really get involved in that day-to-day things and
Yeah.
sort of pay attention to some of the day-to-day things because he was dealing with some of his own health
Yep.
issues and some of his own experiences at school and quite
Yep.
tough. So there was quite a challenge there. Um,
I'm
but yeah,
imagining your parents and like like you talking about like your family, and I'm just imagining your mom and dad managing all of this.
I mean, they're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. And I knew that where I could support is in helping them quite a lot and being that voice of reason sometimes, or
Yeah.
I was the youngest, but I took on a little bit more responsibility sometimes and did do and step up a little bit, but I was really happy to do so. And
Yeah.
that's families step up for each other. And as I've got older, I've had my own health issues and my family have stepped up and supported me. So we
I
all
don't know, it just creates an ecosystem, doesn't it, of like of
absolutely,
vulnerability. Everybody's allowed to be vulnerable, not trying to be tough things.
yeah.
Um,
But
and then Ian,
I think having a sibling with a health condition, it definitely brought us closer together as a family, and it drew like some of the challenges that we might have faced were really tough, and some of the things that happened were really tough and scary times and emergency situations. But at the end of the day, having that love and care and support and awareness of what was going on for everybody, we spoke about everything. There was
Yeah,
nothing that was a secret because it
yeah.
couldn't be. It was all open and honest and there. And we had a great childhood, but a chaotic childhood. So I've coined that phrase of chaotic love. That was what my family
I
was
love
like.
that. I'm gonna remember this from this conversation because it does resonate in my own family. I know we're getting on, and there's other people. But see, with your work with DUK, how how has that changed your perspective to do your job? Like having that background, then.
So it's made me really, really passionate in driving forward that full family support. I know how important that is. I know how important it was for me as a child, being aware of what support was out there and knowing where we as a family could get support and how I could speak to. Like, I went along to residential weekends and spoke to diabetes specialist nurses about diabetes when I was 5 years old, and learn about it from them and got that knowledge. And I know how important that is and how important it is to find your tribe, whoever that is. So I still have siblings, like friends that I met when I was younger at these events, that I still speak to today. I still reach out if something's going on and we chat and we get that support from each other. And going into that professional role with Diabetes UK, it just makes it keeps that in the forefront of my mind, and I can be that voice when there might not be that voice in that room and can just bring that
Or
in.
there just
So
isn't that voice in the
yeah,
room, and that voice is so important to be like reminded about. And I'm so glad that you're in the job that you're in, Ian, even more so now, hearing why, because it's so common sense
yeah,
and logical. Thank you so much, like
you're very welcome.
for for that and for sharing about your family